On behalf of Jordan Competitiveness Program, I'd like to welcome you to this special panel session on CleanTech ICT linkages. On CleanTech ICT linkages. صوتك واضح يعني.
Okay, now.
Evening, Ahsan.
Yes.
Let's do that again. So on behalf of Jordan Competitiveness Program, I would like to welcome you to this special panel session on clean technology ICT linkages. My name is Ruba Al-Zorbi and I'm the Clean Technology Sector Director at JCP. We are expecting a few more guests. I think they're arriving soon. But we will go ahead and start with some introductory remarks from Dr. Wissam Mirabadi, the Chief Authority of JCP. Dr. Wissam?
Thank you. Let me come this way. Well, now, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session on the role of ICT and clean technology. The Jordan Competitiveness Program actually identified three major areas that we work on. One, of course, ICT, which is why we are happy to support the MENA ICT forum. But also clean technologies in general, and healthcare and life sciences. So we just had a previous session that talks about the role of ICT in health or e-health. And this is really discussing the role of ICT in clean technology, be it energy efficiency or renewable energy or transportation, and how can IT really make these sectors more competitive, introduce new technologies, and by the end of the day, I think that our goal, so so people can understand what is it we try to achieve, and it is really three things. It's job creation, how do we create more jobs, increase export to Jordanian companies, and bring FDI and foreign direct investment.
Sorry for the interruption.
No problem.
I have to listen with my friend.
Sure. Is everybody friend?
My wife knows that.
Well, welcome. So really, I think if you want to create, so how can we create jobs, and high value added jobs? How can we increase the export of Jordanian companies, and how can we bring FDI to the country? So we start looking at where are the area that Jordan has a really competitive edge in there. We can see renewable is a hot area today in Jordan, but also that intersection between ICT and clean technology is a rather interesting area, because Abid keep telling me that the ICT sector in Jordan is great and very competitive. So I really think so. I think the IT sector in Jordan is mature, is competitive. So how can we find new applications for the IT sector in areas like energy efficiency, for example? I see the concepts we were hearing from some people, and we have Stuart Lindsay here with us, and he talked about that. The whole concept of smart grids and smart cities, and how is that linked to solar-enabled smart cities? How do you manage networks, and how do you manage energy via IT systems? The cloud, all the technologies that are coming online, and how these things are related to energy, because energy is a very important topic, not just in Jordan. I guess it's globally the most important topic these days. We're hoping that a group of experts today that we are really very honored to have, and they bring a lot of expertise, a lot of views about where the world is going, where are the opportunities, and how can Jordan become a major player in this space. We really look forward to your interventions and That's why we chose to make this more of a panel discussion, more of an interactive session to exchange ideas and really help us understand also where the Jordan Competitiveness Program can help. Where are the areas that we can have interventions to make this sector more competitive. And with that, I'll go back to Roba. Thank you.
Thank you, Wissam. Thank you so much for this introduction. So welcome to the newcomers, and we'll move immediately into our session. As you are aware from our emails and from the program, we do have one special plenary session at the main auditorium at 3 o'clock today, talking about the cities of the future. And we have the same 5 speakers to discuss cities of the future and so on. However, we thought that our CleanTech companies might not be able to attend the MENA ICT forum, and some of them might not feel the relevance or don't have time. So we really wanted you to meet the 5 experts that we brought in today, and we're very honored to have. So the first objective is actually for you to meet with them and to interact with them, and for them to share their insights and experiences. And the second objective of today's meeting is actually to see how can Jordan become a model for the MENA countries in establishing ICT for CleanTech cluster. So we know that we do have the e-health example in Jordan, and I'm glad to see some of the e-health cluster members with us today to share their maybe experiences and insights. So what can we do to enhance those linkages between clean energy, clean technology, and the ICT innovation, services, technologies, and how can we enhance the competitiveness of the private sector in Jordan to provide such services and technology? So without further delay, I'd like to start by introducing quickly the speakers. With us today, I'll start from my right, is Dr. Saeed Al-Hallaj. Dr. Saeed Al-Hallaj is the CEO and chairman and co-founder of All Cell Technologies. He's also a research professor at the University of Illinois in Chicago. He has actually wrote a book. It's called Hybrid Hydrogen Systems. He published over 40 peer-reviewed papers, and he also co-authored several patents and patent applications. And it's an honor to have him here. Congratulations to Dr. Saeed. Yesterday, he signed a letter of commitment with Greater Amman Municipality, the King Hussein Business Park, and the Ministry of Environment to start the first, what you call it, the field pilot or the field demo of electric charging stations, so electric car charging stations in Jordan. So we'd love to hear more about all of these things, inshallah, during our 1-hour discussion. To his right is Mr. Stuart Ramsey, who came all the way from California to be with us and to share his expertise. Stuart has more than 30 years of experience in smart grid, smart cities solutions. He worked with utilities on the regulatory aspects, but currently he has a company that does training on leadership for utilities and for government entities working on the sector, so that's a very interesting angle of his expertise as well. And then to his right is Mr. Bashar Kilani. Mr. Bashar Kilani is the Regional Director for the Middle East and the Levant at IBM. And also he is the JO Expansion Initiative leader, and he will be sharing with us his thoughts about the linkages between ICT and CleanTech today. You're most welcome, Mr. Bashar. And to his right is Dr. Hissam Al-Anouti, another Jordanian, and we're very proud to have, most of our panelists would know, disrespect Stuart.
He's adopted.
Hopefully you'll be Jordanized with time from Jordan, which means that if they can do it abroad, we can do it here. So Dr. Hissam Al-Anouti is also the Chief Technical Officer of Townsend, which is a new company established here in Jordan at IPAR. And it is specialized in smart grid solutions. He also has a wealth of experience in ICT for smart grid solutions experience, and we're very glad to take it and be with us. And of course, last but not least, is also Hazem Zreqat, who has a master's from MIT, and he works for a Jordanian leading company, engineering company called Engicom. He's specialized in urban transportation planning and systems, and he will be sharing with us also his perspectives on what can we do to improve things in our cities in the MENA region today. So without further delay, I would like also to mention and to acknowledge the presence of His Excellency Khalid Irani, who is an ex-Minister of Environment, ex-Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, and he's currently, he's a senator, and he's also involved from the private sector, side in energy and environment. Also with us is Mr. Maher Matalqa, Dr. Maher Matalqa, the chairman of the Idama Association, Mr. Hamna Zaghloul, also CEO of Our Energy, Dr. Muayyad Samman, the chairman of the King Hussein Business Park, and of course, I will not forget Philadelphia Solar, and Mr. Bassem Saleh. I don't want to go around the table and introduce everybody, so maybe once you ask a question or you make an intervention, please do introduce yourself and the Green Building Council, and everybody, you're most welcome. We also have a bunch of JCP colleagues who are here also to capture any recommendations related to workforce development, legal or regulatory reforms, innovation, and nobody from Access Points, okay. Please, without further delay, I'd like to leave the floor to you guys. I'll just be moderating.
Is it a Q&A?
Feel free, would you like to start, Stuart, by maybe explaining a little bit what in your experience are the perfect linkages between clean technology and ICT?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know that there's any, I wouldn't propose that I know the perfect linkage. But, so I've spent most of my career has been in the utility industry. Most of my career has been in the utility industry. And so the real linkage between ICT and what we're talking about with smart cities is the communication, the intelligence. We have a lot of devices out there, and they can be smart on their own. There's thermostats that know how to do things, programmable. But really where we begin to see power and we begin to see value is in taking that information and taking the data. So we talk a lot about big data, and I apologize now if you find this offensive, but in the utility industry, data is worthless. We're awash in data. It's drowning us. It's killing us. And so without systems, now here's the good part for you, without systems to take the data and convert it into useful information, the data is a liability. But if you take the data and turn it into useful information and put that information in the hands of knowledgeable people, they can create new insights. And insight is what allows you to make a different decision, make a better decision, and create some benefit. And so for me, without ICT, there isn't a smart grid, there isn't a smart city. What I think we really need to do is think about the longer term plan. Where is it that we're trying to go? As I look at what happened to the utility industry and smart grid, there were 100 different views of what smart grid should be. And so the industry got pulled in many different directions. I think we have a benefit for smart cities now to look at the mistakes that the utility industry made. And we made, I was an officer of two of the largest utilities in the US. I can tell you our industry made a lot of really good decisions, and we made a lot of really bad decisions. So as we start to look at smart cities, I think we should look at what the utility industry went through, because there's a lot of analogy. The cities are infrastructure heavy. They don't have customers, but the citizens of the cities are like customers. So there's a lot that we can learn from the mistakes and the positive things that came out of the utility industry and build much better linkages between ICT, the infrastructure, smart buildings, smart healthcare, smart governance, smart education. So I think that there's a lot that we can do there. And the good application of ICT is going to make the difference as far as I'm concerned. So hopefully that's a good start.
Thank you very much. I think this is a great introduction. ICT and smart cities are really interlinked. And when we talk about smart cities, we talk about people, we talk about processes, but we also talk about infrastructure. And with infrastructure, we mean smart buildings, traffic, water, electricity, energy, and all of that stuff. What is changing here and what's enabling us to have a new era here is the availability of data, as mentioned. We have so many sensors, we can collect so much data, and that is really the essence of a smart city. Data today is, in my view, the new natural resource. The more you use it, the more you refine it, the more valuable it will become. And you need to use this data in order to transform your smart city into something that's more livable, but also sustainable. How does this all link together? I think it all comes together by making our infrastructure much more efficient and effective. And we're going to be able to do this because we understand from the data what happened in the past, what's happening at the moment, and what will happen in the future, and how to change that, and how to analyze that, and how to influence that. Today, we do a lot of research and engagement with cities on optimizing traffic using the data that they have, optimizing the underlying energy systems, whether it's the water grid or the electricity grid, and having a smart grid underneath it to make sure that we have the right usage of technology and integration with the energy infrastructure to have an optimum drive for energy spend and clean energy and around that. Cloud computing is a very important point here. With cloud computing, we will be able to use exactly as much technology and energy as we need. We are not going to have oversized, overscoped data centers. The most energy consuming sectors in a city is data centers, buildings, and traffic. And these are the three different components that we need to focus on and try and get under our control. And cloud computing is really important in that aspect. The other element that we're working on, of course, is research on renewable energy. We're doing a lot of research with local universities in the Middle East here around nanotechnology and how we can use nanotechnology for water desalination, for extracting energy from getting solar energy. These are all components that are very important for creating new research opportunities that are in this part of the world. If IP is developed by universities and institutions in this part of the world, this can become another national treasure or another national resource. So these are the kind of, in my view, two views where we need to focus on. One is the big data and analytics component around efficiency, and the other one is around research with universities and institutions around renewable energy, especially that we have a lot of light and a lot of sunshine in this part of the world. We can become an energy exporter out of solar energy, as we have been for the last century on hydrocarbons. So I think big data for us now, hydrocarbons were for the region maybe in the last century.
You're making it very difficult for me to contribute. Thank you very much. You covered a lot of ground. I want to touch on the word smart. What makes cities smart, or what makes a grid smart? It's ICT that makes it smart. If we look at the smart, all of the components in a smart grid, they rely heavily on devices in the field that with sensors and data collection and use communication equipment to transport the data into the data center. All of these components, without IT, without specifically programmed in them and the supporting infrastructure, would be dumb devices just installed that doesn't do anything. So the role of ICT, or the linkage into the smart cities or smart grid, is integral. It's the linchpin to the entire industry in this space. Be it from embedded software development into the communication, into integration into the data center that requires a lot of software development on the server side, integration to the existing utility systems like billing systems, data management, the cloud security, all of the above requires ICT to make a smart city smart. With that, I don't, again, you guys covered a lot of ground.
I'd like to get also the chance to hazard
You just made it even more difficult for me to add. I'll just talk briefly about. I mean, I'll echo what my colleagues said about the using data and using smart systems to make our infrastructure more efficient and more effective, environmentally and operationally as well. In terms of transportation or urban transportation, I'll expand on this in the panel on smart cities. I think one of the low-hanging fruits we have in Jordan, specifically in Amman, is the area of travel information. There's so much data available now that authorities use mostly for enforcement and monitoring, but that's not being used to enhance the operation and the capacity and the effectiveness of the infrastructure being used today. So, and this is really a very important point because we're seeing increasing amounts of traffic congestion, increasing levels of traffic congestion, costing us, I think, about 1.8 billion JDs a year in travel time lost due to traffic congestion. 40% of our energy bill in Jordan is spent on transportation. So really finding ICT-based solutions that can help us more effectively manage our road network and our transportation network, because we clearly can't build our way out of it, would be very beneficial. On a completely different side, I want to talk about our experience as a company in the water sector. And I think it's interesting to see that the government now, specifically in the water sector, is pursuing energy-saving contracts. Our company is an engineering consulting firm, so we traditionally do design work for water infrastructure, for pumping stations, wastewater treatment plants. Usually, where the government tenders out specific design work. But what we're seeing now is more of a partnership, and we've established a subsidiary company for that purpose, where the government is seeking the private sector to help really develop solutions that are energy saving for the water and wastewater infrastructure in the kingdom, and then help with the operations and then hand them over to the government. So we have a recent experience in a pumping station where we were asked to install energy saving equipment and then sort of share the energy savings with the government for a certain number of years. And now with water prices increasing, as we're getting water from DC and from other sources, implementing those solutions becomes important, and also in terms of one final thing I want to mention in that respect is the access to finance. I think JCP is doing a lot in that respect. What we're seeing is that the banking regulations in Jordan and banks in Jordan still lack the institutional capacity in terms of project financing, but not so. We've been able to work on what we've worked on with international donors mostly, but not with local banks.
So I got to tell you, when Roba said, Saeed, you have to participate and be the expert, I said, now who are the experts that we're going to be? I didn't know that, but actually, it's really, I feel, so I have the pleasure of knowing a lot of you here in the room, and I feel really intimidated. So we're here talking, but you guys are doing the work, and I know a lot of people here who have world-class experience and who bring to Jordan ideas, projects, technology, and even creative financing that over the last 5 years I've privileged talking to you. So I'm not trying to kiss anybody behind, but there's a lot to be learned here in Jordan. There are some areas that probably can be contributed, but I think based on my experience, I come every few months and I see that there's tremendous knowledge and resources. There may be some areas that we can help, but we got a lot to learn from Jordan, because here energy is not a luxury like in the US. It's not a matter of price. Here, I lived in Jordan. Water and energy, these are crises for us all the time. So I know in the US we talk about this as something to improve in the energy efficiency. Here, the people live here with it. It's a real energy security issue and real livelihood people. So I feel that we get a lot of work, but if there's an area that we can contribute with my specialty is in energy storage. and this is becoming more and more actually important, not just in Jordan, but everywhere. The link between energy storage is actually creating a new concept of that traditionally transportation is separate from the stationary or the grid. Today, with the introduction of electric vehicles, they have to communicate. So it could be either liability because you add power to the load of to the grid because of all these electric cars, and the grid is not designed that way. The only way to deal with that is to actually tap into that information, see where the buffers, the cluster, and energy storage become a very important concept to supplement the grid. And we have been working in the US in some project utility to do that. But as you do that, you find that the same energy storage system that could help the grid, demand shift and all that, can actually help in Jordan with grid stabilization. This is an area in the US and East Coast, with the PGM area, our system are deployed. They can help regulate, especially when we have high penetration capacity of renewable with Jordan facing. Once you go about 12 to 15% of grid capacity, the interruption and the quality of the grid becomes questionable because of renewable intermittency. Energy storage now is actually the largest deployment program in the US, Europe, and Japan, and that's what we focus on. It was not tapped in, still in early industry. We have tremendous challenges, but I feel that this is an area that Jordan can benefit in the energy storage to supplement the deployment of renewables at the same time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I would like now to open the floor for interventions, questions, and I'd like them to be focused on the demand and supply side of what we're trying to create here. So if there is demand for ICT services and technologies in CleanTech, what is that demand and how big is it? Do we understand the demand? And then do we know how to supply either products or services or people to satisfy that demand? And would like to start with Mr. Bassem, and I need help with the microphone, please, so that we can pass it.
I think it's like a bit of a small room.
I can speak up, please.
Please just raise your
Raise your
hand.
voice, please.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you, JCP, USAID, Ruba-Wissam, and Intaj, and everybody who has put this together. I think it's a great thing to talk about this, especially in Jordan. I'm going to put my pragmatic hat on, and I also want to say hi to a lot of my friends who I haven't seen in a long time. And I would like to ask a question that I think we should discuss today, which is, how do we make the biggest buyer, the catalyst, the government of Jordan, think seriously about this issue of demand-side management, high penetration distributed solar, the issues that make ICT help renewable energy penetration, EV introduction into the country at a mass scale, electric vehicle, charging stations, storage, as Saeed said. There's a lot we can do, but how do we start? How do we jumpstart this process? By working with the government on real projects, not small size, but things that we can actually be proud of as a country. Where do we start? What's the low-hanging fruit, if you will? How can giants like IBM and other companies help us? I mean, there's a lot we can do in this country, but we need to start somewhere. I think we have the brain power, as Saeed said, in this room, but we need to start with a pragmatic set of projects, if you will. JCP can support, I'm sure.
Thank you for mentioning that, actually, Mr. Bassem, and I'm so proud to say that we are actually jump-starting a couple of strategic projects that could be the trigger for market transformation. One of them is actually this campus that you're sitting in, and we have just issued an expression of interest. It's no secret, it's online, to invite companies from the US and Jordan to show us what is their approach to convert this into a smart campus. So definitely.
But that's private sector starting to.
No, it is not.
What do we do with the public sector? No, what do we do on the part of the government? I mean, how do we talk to Mr. Battaji and say, let's do a lot of the demand side management experiments? How do we talk to the regulator to say, improve penetration, on the grid and the distributed side of the grid? There's a lot we can do, but where do we start, or how do we do
The
this?
question is great, and I'd love to hear from others on the table. However, we also want to see if we really need to start at the government, or should we lead in another way. Abed. Yes, Abed, تفضل, please.
Thank you. I guess we don't need to use the microphone. Just just to elaborate a little bit concerned when you talk about that we want government.
No, I'm saying we lead, but they are the biggest buyer of it. I mean, without the government being the catalyst for mass economies of scale production, R&D that is driven by the market, it's not going to happen. I mean, I'm just being pragmatic here. We can do
And
small.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way we've seen the government the past 4 years, because of budget deficit actually going from trying to save itself more than actually do projects. In my opinion, and I come from a technology background, and I see what the technology companies have been going through of reduction of spending in a number of areas, I don't think it's going to happen.
No, investors will come. Investors will bring the money for these projects, just like solar, large, mega-scale solar projects.
Let me try just to draw. I mean, I'd like to draw a picture, and that's what we tried to do in health, for example, and that's honestly what we're seeing in other areas in technology. I'm not saying that we need to model it the same, but I'm saying as an example. And His Excellency Moayed Saman is here. I mean, a great project. I mean, starting at the park. This is national scale. I mean, this is a very interesting one. Is it private sector? Well, I would argue. Is it private sector? Is it army? Is it public sector? It's public private, yeah. It's mixed. So an example of this, if you can scale it up, do a number of projects like this, and then you actually have a nice concept to actually work on. And then the government will actually come on board. All what I'm saying that I don't think the government will jump on it immediately. All I'm saying is we need to start somewhere, and then the government will join. And what we've done in health is actually the same. I mean, 5 years ago or something, we had no idea where to start in health. And health and technology were completely separate. And completely, if you talk to a doctor about health, about technology, he'll tell you, well, okay, well, great, good luck. And if you talk to technology people about integrating doctors in it, they'll tell you, okay, good luck as well. Today, I mean, we're talking about some of the tools utilized by public hospitals. We've just seen actually some of the examples today. It's quite interesting. It's quite amazing. The way it started was not by public sector at all. It was purely by private sector. Private sector coming and actually offering the technology to the government to use it for a while. Okay, or doing partnership with some of the hospitals and going on this, and then it actually the government came on board and said, well, okay, this is interesting, let's capitalize on it. But as trying to get the government in it at the beginning was almost next to impossible, honestly.
Thank you, Abid, for sharing this. I just have a hand there, and then Mr. Bashar would like to make an intervention. Let's please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, my name is William Altman. I'm from the WAMDA Research Lab. And my question is, if anyone in the room knows what role startups can play in solving this issue. I realize we're looking at kingdom-wide solutions, but as you said, solutions have to come from somewhere, and do startups have a role? And if so, how do we facilitate this?
Thank you. I think this is a good question. Back to all the questions. Yes, we have to work on alternative energy. So I know that the UAE, for example, is looking at different projects for renewable energy. DIWA and ADWIA are trying to now put laws that allow you to actually sell into the grid. They are starting to put electrical points for electrical vehicles. And this is all important and happening. It will take its time and its course. But I think data, again, is a quicker solution, and it will help us in a way to do that. One project we're working on in the UAE, joint research with the UAE, is called City in Motion. We're trying to work with telco providers to understand from them, because they have the big data. They can tell you today what the traffic looks like in Amman, because they understand with your cell phones how many people are around us here, where are they going, what is the traffic flow, how is the traffic flow in the morning, how is the traffic flow in the evening. With this big data, the government can actually start producing solutions once it understands the trends and what is happening. So by providing this data to the people, you can actually contribute to easing the traffic, because if I know that it's going to take me now half an hour to go from here to Abdali, I'll probably take the opportunity. If I know it's going to take me an hour and a half, I'm going to probably postpone it until it's a different time. So that kind of data availability is probably going to be our new natural resource, as I mentioned. Startups can build a lot of solutions on top of this data. Once this data is made available, you can buy it from the telco providers, the government can subsidize it. You will find so many startups coming up with little apps that will tell you how to get to King Hussein Park, how to go to Abdali, how to go to the airport. Everybody will come up with an app that tells you this is the optimum way to do this thing. And they will build on top of that. Commercial entities will start using this data in order, let's say we're working with one of the big malls in the UAE, they want to use this data to send to their clients and say, please come on Tuesday morning because that's probably going to be the easiest. And by the way, I know from the data that the people who come on Tuesday morning are probably mainly housewives who are not working and so on. So I'm probably also going to adjust my marketing messages during that time to that segment of the market. I'm going to adjust it to a different segment of people, let's say over the weekend or at night or something like that. I can see what kind of people are coming into my mall and what are their preferences. And of course you can build on top of that and start segmenting the market into more and more smaller segments and be a little bit more precise and start offering individual and personalized offerings for them. So this big data story creates a huge opportunity, and it does not need you to have big factories or big investments. This is really the startups that sit in a Jordanian company with a couple of smart developers who can take this data and start to see value for it and sell and upsell the value on it. So this project of City in Motion that we're trying to do in the UAE could be a nice example for something that Amman can start working on to become a smart city. And all the players are here. You have the telcos, and they have the data. You have the government that could probably look at a model to commercialize this market. And then you have the eager ICT sector that would like to start building application and value out on top of that. This would probably make Amman a smarter city. This would create better jobs. This would make it easier to live in Amman and move around and run a business and drive revenue and all that stuff. So that really becomes our next natural resource, and it's all available now. It will take the government ages to get the electrical vehicle on the streets. It will take the government ages to get the laws that allow you to sell into the grid and so on. But this kind of thing, because it has such a commercial aspect, and the telco industry is much more liberated than other industries, it could be a starter or a quicker starting point.
Thank you so much. I'm just being conscious about the time, so I'd like to open the floor to more people to ask. Dr. Moaid Salman.
And I'm just probably small intervention. You were talking about the application, how government can help out. We are a private company, but owned by the Jordan Armed Forces. So I think we have the facilities and we have the flexibility to do so many things. That's why we're signing all kinds of agreements in order to reach to the smart city concept. I talked with the mayor of Amman, and he likes very much the idea of considering the park as a test bench for all the municipality initiatives in the future. So yesterday was a demonstration of what we agreed with the mayor of Amman when we signed the first station for the solar cars, for the electric cars to be charged here. So the first station, they will distribute around 10 solar stations. The first one will be here. So we are becoming as a test bench, working with JCP for the smart cities. Again, definitely we can make use of the concept of the smart cities. We start implementation within this small area, and then we can expand to larger areas. The third one you mentioned about the relation with the startups. In fact, yesterday His Majesty inaugurated Grow Building. It's just next by, so you can go and visit it. It is 800 square meter of land available for startups, and it is an initiative by the King Hussein Business Park in order to help out all startups in different mechanisms. We also have the telecom companies on board, and this is the first time that we have the 3 telecom companies in one building. So you can go there, make use of Zen Initiative Zinc, You can go there, make use of Orange Initiative and of Omnia Initiative in one building, besides the low-cost expenses of moving your business to the business park. So we can easily accommodate 100 startups. So with the ecosystem, with the presence of the star companies that are existing within the park, with the concept of the solar and all these buzzwords, these people can nurture and can definitely interact with each other. Sometimes you don't have to force people to interact with each other. Put them in one room and they will definitely interact. And we found many successful initiatives in Jordan, even in the business park. We have the data center of the Bank Al-Ahli. It's just an example of how people interact with each other. And we have the gaming lab next by. So Noor Khares from the gaming lab, he came by and said, Moyed, we had an excellent project with the Bank Al-Ahli. I said, how? He said, we were just queuing in front of the supermarket. They have a very nice project, so we took it. So this is the way. You don't have to force people. Just put them in the right environment, let them talk to each other, give them the right culture, the right environment, and things will move without imposing, without just forcing people to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moyed. Firas Abed, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I really just wanted to focus on the ICT with the energy part together and how important that is to do the market transformation we all want to see. Energy is a big giant. People that are working from the energy background and energy field are mostly electromechanical engineers with the electromechanical background. We have the other ICT giant with people that are really experienced with the ICT but don't know the electromechanical building physics issues. I think now we're at a time and really crossroad where if we really merge the ICT expertise with the electromechanical expertise together, we can really transform the energy sector in Jordan. And this has been happening in the last 10 years in Europe and in the US. We've been following that. And it really makes a difference. It's big data. It's more about analyzing the data. Today we have lots of buildings in Jordan, private sector, and we know about a few governmental big buildings that have sort of an intelligent system, the building management system inside them. You have a huge amount of data there, but nobody's using this data. Nobody's extracting this data and transforming it into information or into useful information. So today the challenge is taking and capturing the data that's available in some of the buildings, and we can showcase that at the buildings, that whether it's governmental or whether it's private sector buildings, and then we can just use this data to really transform the energy and really make it more and more smart and energy efficient. And then it's going to be a very easy step forward doing we can say collaboration, we can say the data sharing between the buildings, where we can start doing real benchmarking. One of the major things that we're all facing in Jordan is the lack of information when it comes, let's say, to investment. Okay, today buildings are different than the old days. You have a capex, you build this building, and then you're stuck. You're not being able to run that building because you have this giant operational cost that's coming out from the building. So today, with the information that's available today, we can just work a bit on it, analyze the data that's available, make this data more available to a wider sector of people. And I'm sure like the government will come and say, okay, I want this data. Now I can make decisions. I can make better decisions. Today we're all lacking of making accurate decisions because we don't have this amount of data that we want. If I can benchmark buildings, separate governmental buildings, I can do some analysis. It's going to be an easy step for the government or for anybody just to take decisions. And I don't want to say it, but he's going to be stuck in the corner and he needs to take the decision. Whereas today, they're afraid to take decision because of the uncertainty of the amount of information that's coming out of the reports, of the researches that are happening. We can have this data like in real-time data available for everybody. Private sector, governmental, everybody can share this data, and we can really, the way we're looking into energy, and we can really reduce our carbon footprint and make a better economy out of all of that.
Thank you, Firas. So does IDAMA Association?
Thank you, Ruba, and thank you all for this lovely interaction. And congratulations, Moyed, on the initiative. I think it's fantastic, and that shows the private-public partnership that's really in place. IDAMA has done a lot in the renewable energy domain.
from the renewable energy law to the net metering to the wheeling, and we're really pushing the envelope with the government. You really have to be tenacious and fight and push your case. I think our governments are scrambling for solutions. You mentioned traffic. I think that data you mentioned, sir, if you can show it to the traffic department or to the public security, they can adopt that. But it's just you need to make them aware. They are scrambling for solutions. And as we're pushing the envelope for the renewable energy, I'm sure there are a lot of smart people around the room, and we can really provide solutions, make the government officials aware what we have. Obviously here we're not talking vacuum. We talked about UAE, you talked about the United States, my good friend Saeed. We've been talking about the hybrid cars and the electric cars since 5-6 years ago. Luckily we have an open-minded mayor that will allow this. So you really need to push your case. Again, we need solutions. Our priorities are known in Jordan: water, energy, traffic. Let's adopt in this panel what I would like to see, a set of recommendations. And JCP, along with IDAMA, will be the watchdog to push these recommendations, put them forward to the government to be able to implement them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mahan. What would be the first recommendation that everybody here feels something that JCP can really work on starting next week? What did the e-health cluster do when they first started?
I would say I love the idea of the number of one companies, incubators and accelerators that are available here, and this zone being transforming itself into a smart zone. So let's get technology companies, startups, and basically small and medium companies and energy companies together. Let's do in technology we have a concept of a hackathon, where we put people for 2 days actually. During these 2 days they develop models and initial concepts of software code. Maybe we can do this actually in technology and energy, or a mixed concept, and actually try to develop solutions for the park. Those will be tried, okay, for the park. We can take them on. We can actually encourage incubators to invest in them. We can bring investors, and I'm sure CleanTech companies maybe would love to actually take these on board. It's going to be a demo of like 200 applications that could actually maybe help in that direction. So that would be an interesting one, at least from our side. We're happy to help as with that.
Great. We took note of the last statement in particular. Any other specific recommendations? Mr. Anas, please.
Ruba,
Do you need a mic?
that's okay. Just in general, I want to encourage, as someone that came from the ICT sector, having spent about 9 years in the ICT sector, I heavily encourage the focus of ICT entrepreneurship on the energy and water sectors. And the reason for that is that in Jordan, you actually have a global competitive advantage if you're focused on energy and water. Because this region, the Middle East, North Africa, the Arab region, in desalination is 60% of global capacity. It's the global mega market. So if you're based in Jordan and you're providing ICT services, technologies to that sector, you actually have a competitive advantage by being in Jordan, not in India, or not in China, because the global mega market is this region, is your backyard. That's sector number one. Sector number two, oil and gas. Now I know it's not as clean energy, but we're trying to make it cleaner, but also this region is the second biggest market in the world for procurement of oil and gas related technology, products and services. So the ICT sector has not, this is another area where we haven't really focused as ICT, this sector where you actually have an advantage being in Jordan versus again being in China or being in India or Singapore or you name it. And the third sector is, we're seeing what's happening in Jordan. Jordan is a leader in adopting solar. But ultimately, this region, solar applications are more efficient in this region than most of the world, right? Saudi has a 40 gigawatt solar plant. That's more than 1/3 of all the solar power in the world today. So you actually have a competitive edge by being in Jordan if you're serving that solar industry, okay, with ICT technologies, products and services. So this region, you actually have a competitive edge in serving these sectors with whatever it is, chairs or advanced software. So just keep that in mind. Next door to us are two of the biggest oil and gas exporters in the world, Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Saudi is the biggest desalinator in the world in terms of water desalination capacity. They will be one of the biggest solar markets in the world. So you can combine the strength we have in ICT with being in a mega market for applications in energy and water. Okay? And we're investors in this space and developers, so on the energy and water side. And we're open to ICT investments for our next funds and current funds.
Excellent. So the 200
Okay.
companies that Ahmed is going to help us establish, you're going to invest in. Thank you so much.
5 of them.
Thank you, Anas. I would like also, I'll come to you, sir, but I'd like also the engineering, architects and engineering business council to also maybe share some thoughts after the gentleman. Please introduce yourselves.
My name is Mazid Johani. I'm from the GIS company in Jordan. Most of the electric, water, and clean energy initiatives they require location and geographic information. So we see a big growth will be in startups adopting GIS solutions offering they do. Like example on the transportation in Egypt, the company started harvesting the tweets coming from the people in Cairo. And based on the tweets, they put them on the streets and they analyze the traffic and then put you in a web application that gives you the status of the traffic you can check on your mobile. So even in talking about smart campus like here, you need it's all location, it's all building space is related to infrastructure. All that application components, this is the application bit that takes the location, the XY, with the other infrastructure layers. I see a big growth on it, and they would start a lot of ideas like maintenance activities related to location, shortest path, analysis, hotspot areas, all based on location. Even on the energy efficiency, if you want to calculate for a city, look at the sun angle of the sun, look at the spaces available on building, on the floors of top floors of buildings. These you need tools, location tools, and GIS tools to analyze. So somebody can develop these applications that will work with the electric companies, with the fuel companies, solar companies. It will give a great.
Excellent, and maybe make this more cheap in terms of the GIS maps.
More efficient.
More efficient, definitely, but definitely also more cheap. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to speak.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I'd like to speak. My name is Bas Fa'i. I'm here on behalf of the Architects and Engineers Business Council. It's really a great opportunity to sit and talk, listen and talk to you guys. When I heard about cities in motion, I was thinking about our beloved city Amman, our capital, the city that is suffocating under its own weight of traffic. It's pointless to talk about energy conservation and about efficiency when the city is not moving in the right direction of public transportation. I think if we can come out with an initiative here or some kind of message to the government that this is not a joke. Amman needs a public transportation system. And here, the opportunity of Dr. Muayyad when he said that this business park was a model for Amman. Maybe if you were to adopt a shuttle bus here that is solar driven, for example, because this park is the same as Amman. This park was not designed for business, for the private sector. And I can see it suffocating under its own weight of traffic as well. I was about to turn around and go back because I couldn't find a place to park and find the building. So I think we need some kind of a very highly creative solution here that could be a pilot project for Amman itself. So maybe here we could have something, since you have the opportunity and the encouragement to do something in the park, and you have the ability, of course, this could be a pilot thing that we can give to this.
Does engineering firms and engineers in Jordan adopt technology? Do you feel happy? Because every time we meet with the AE Business Council, they ask for more softwares, more kind of like the softwares are updated every day. We don't know what to do, especially the architects. Is this something that you face on your day-to-day? How can we make you more competitive in your services?
Well, that's one thing here. It's a good question, actually. As far as my office are concerned, we just finished the first LEED Gold certified green building for the private sector in Jordan. That was quite an achievement. The building saves 52% on water consumption and 23% on energy. It's quite a big building on Zahran Street.
Where is it?
Middle East Insurance Company. It's on Zahran Street. That was quite a challenge actually, and we were encouraged to do that by Amman municipality. When Omar Maani was mayor, he gave them encouragement. He said he will drop the value of their the compensation they need to pay for the city if they turn their building to be green, and that motivated them to do so. And we did that pilot project and succeeded. Now, when it comes to programming, yes, we are suffering because we have a big challenge as AE business offices. Programs are expensive. The support is not strong enough. You buy the program, but you do not get the support you need. They sell you the program and they turn away. They don't give you training, and it's a big hassle, and so it makes it very difficult for us to compete with others in the Gulf or somewhere else.
Thank you, that's really important. And I'd like also to ask Mr. Hamna, how about the smart grids and all of these like new terminologies that are coming aboard, and the impact assessment and the all of these terminologies that people do not even know what they mean. Is there a potential? Is there an opportunity? How can we help?
Thank you. In fact, there is a great opportunity for Jordan today to take advantage of what's going to be, what's happening and what's developing. If you remember back when information technology, telecommunication, and multimedia converged, we had a mobile. Today what's happening is energy, information technology, and telecommunications are converged. And this is a great opportunity for Jordan because we have a very strong platform of information technology. Energy we start to pick up on just recently, and I think this and our grid and this small can be managed in a different way. And the telecommunication, I think we have a lot of expertise in the telecommunication. So for the startups, actually, it's a great opportunity to take advantage of that. Today, if you look at Intel, what they are doing in energy, now there's a wireless electricity. They can transfer electricity wireless. And for the sake of charging the heart pace, pacemakers, instead of having a battery implanted. So this is the way we need to start to think, okay? Buildings are important, managing electricity itself also is important. A lot of energy gets wasted because we need to have base load, okay? Why don't we have energy on demand, right? And this is something that we need to think of. And frankly, this is similar to IT. If you look back into how we started the computer, it used to be huge, centralized, connected to it, right? Client servers and things like that. Today it's distributed. And today is the human or person who's carrying a mobile can contribute to that. The same thing is going to happen in energy. Believe it or not, within 20 years, something like that, we'll see the same thing that happened in the IT 25 or 30 years ago in the energy. So Jordan needs to be prepared. And I think it has all the right ingredients for it. And we can take advantage of that, okay? And the only thing that we have is our mind, our brains. We don't have other resources to depend on, so just use it.
And how can big companies like Kawar Energy and other investors and developers support this new cluster? Since you guys are going to need those applications, they're going to complement the market. Is there any plans from your end to help?
It depends on the idea. Actually, when we started Kawar Energy and at the beginning with Ama, I was one of the first people to talk to Abed, who's not here, and to see how we can actually work together, the energy and the IT sector, because I come back from the IT sector also. I know how things are developed there. And now, 5 years after that, I think we started to do something. It's just things, they do take time, but at the end of the day, it will happen. Whether we like it or not, it's gonna happen. So if we start to focus on it from today, we're ready. If we see good ideas, we're ready to invest in such ideas and move them forward. And that there's a good return out of that. It's good business.
Thank you so much. That was so insightful. I know Stuart wanted to make a short intervention before we try to conclude with some final remarks.
I'd just like to follow up on the last gentleman's point. So I think there's a risk if we continue to think about ICT and energy separately, so the city's in motion. To me, you should be, so you asked for a recommendation. My recommendation would be find and leverage the self-funding opportunities that exist now. You talked about cities in motion. I'm working with a modest-sized city and utility up in Canada right now. The city, maybe 500,000 population, was about to spend $40 to $50 million Canadian to convert all of their street lighting to LED for energy savings. They're working with the utility to, in addition to the conversion, to add solar on the light poles. And they're bringing in third-party financing. So rather than the city investing 40 to 50 million, somebody else is bringing in the investment, taking the revenue stream off the savings and the solar production, and paying a dividend back to the city. And so the city is now able to take the 40 to 50 million dollars and redeploy it elsewhere. They take the dividend and redeploy it elsewhere. But the very interesting thing is that this new streetlight conversion they're putting in comes with a wireless network that supports traffic cameras, supports security cameras. All of that investment is already embedded. And so there are literally dozens of opportunities like that. And so if we think longer term about what it is we want to achieve, you can start to implement tomorrow strategies that will take you in that direction. We all know technology is going to change over time, but there are things that we can start doing today that pay for themselves. I don't know if you have the expression in Jordan, we call it a no regrets strategy, right? So we make that investment, there's no regret. It's paid for 5 years from now. If we want to do something different, it doesn't matter. And so there are a lot of no regrets strategies. In a business park like this, each of the buildings may have an energy management system. We can use that to get energy efficiency gains. But if we take a look at the whole park, we can optimize the entire park to reduce the demand as well as get energy efficiency. You look at water systems. So use the data in your water. So I spent a lot of my career looking at water systems. Water systems lose 30, on average, good water systems lose 30% of the water to leaks. So solve the leaks. Use the data to solve the leaks. You save 30% of your energy from pumping, 30% of the energy from desalination. And so there's a lot of self-funding opportunities that you don't need the government to step in. You can pay for them yourself.
I would like to get the chance for one more question or remark before we conclude, and I would like also to also mention that we will be sending over some of the recommendations that we could capture today, but we would like to invite you to provide input on that so that we can probably have another roundtable or focus group discussion not so far from now, to actually develop an action plan on how we can push this cluster forward, including the idea from APEC, but also I'd appreciate Stuart's and the speakers' insights based on what you've just heard. I didn't hear anybody saying that the ICT sector does not understand the CleanTech sector, or the CleanTech sector does not understand much technology. So I don't know if this is a problem or not. And I think maybe part of the recommendations you would be also making is related to capacity building, to training, to certification, and what we need to do in Jordan in order to become the hub and not only to showcase at the beginning. Joanna, short question?
Short one.
Please.
Actually, most of the examples or words used for linkages ICT with the CleanTech was energy, water, traffic. No one mentioned waste. Is it with less percentage to be involved in this direction, or it is not lucky that degree to reach the water and energy needs?
I have just installed a cool app. It makes me report any littering, any illegal littering that I see in the street, and I immediately take a photo and report the location.
Trash out.
And trash out.
Yeah.
But I don't think the waste sector is really being understandable, not only from the IT community, but even from the CleanTech community, Joanna, unfortunately. But also because we don't have we don't have enough companies in the waste sector as well in Jordan. So the cluster is more oriented towards energy.
Maybe if one of the speakers have an idea or something he saw outside or something to mention for us, if you have.
You have landfill waste that you've seen in Abu Dhabi, maybe.
Yes, we implemented a pilot. It's not a project that did not roll out completely due to budget cuts and other considerations, but we implemented a pilot in some areas in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, where we installed odor sensors because there are complaints in the city that some of the manholes have bad smell. And what we've done is installed sensors inside the sewage system that would measure the flow of the sensor of the liquids inside, and also measure the odor and do some communication devices and transmit those data points to a centralized server for analysis and modeling. And we would detect those leaks in the sewage system that would dispatch crews to go and fix those areas. I don't know if that's a problem here in terms of...
We have bigger problems, believe me.
Right, so it was not only for odor, but also to make sure the flow of the sewage system keeps going to avoid...
but maybe the business part can also adopt this other control system, no?
But not to forget, I do not gross everybody, but we trained some technicians to, because those sensors would be covered with solids, and so we had to train some technicians to dive into the sewage system and clean them up. So make sure you do that before you...
Great job.
Before I thank you all, I would like to introduce Engineer Suhair Mehrat. Engineer Suhair Mehrat is the coordinator of Seawheel chapter or network in Jordan. Seawheel is the Council for Women in Energy and Environment Leaders, and it is an international council, and we have a chapter now under IDAMA, under the AEE chapter. Suhair is going to speak for a couple of minutes about what is Seawheel, and also to encourage you, whether you're females or males, to join the network and support Seawheel.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great opportunity to join this session to represent Seawheel Jordan in this forum. Seawheel is the Council in Women in Energy and Environmental Leadership. It's a division of the Association of Energy Engineers in the United States. And Seawheel Jordan is the first international chapter worldwide. It launched in May 2014. Seawheel in general support the role of women in energy and environmental sectors, and it assists career development activities for existing professionals and enables young women who's interested in leadership roles to find their mentors to get them involved in the sector and development themselves. The linkage between the energy sector and the IT sector is now clear after this session. But I want only to stress a couple sentences that energy manager depend totally on collection, analyzing, and transmission the data. So he could save money and save our human resources, and even ensure the economical use for the generated energy from the renewable sources. I think that the ICT sector could help the energy sector in increase the opportunity for gender equality, since the energy sector has tended to be male-dominated sector. But now with the development, the ICT sector could present a unique opportunity for the women to become more trained and enter the workforce. And this will give a greater diversity for the industries with more talent, ideas, and experience. I think ICT also enhance Seawheel purposes in opening the doors for women for higher and more visibility in big events, in industries and programs and new leadership opportunities. In Seawheel Jordan, now we are working in networking stage. We have till now, from May, we have 3 meetings, and we'll have our 4th meetings on Saturday from 5 to 7:30 at Bellevue Hotel. And you, all of you are welcome to attend. We have a special guest from Deloitte from USA. We'll have Ms. Kate Warrington. She will talk about women, energy, and empowerment. And it may benefit from my presence here in this session to announce that Civil Jordan now have social media platforms. So join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and follow us on Twitter. Let us provide a voice for women in industry to let them face today's rapidly changing in energy and environment sector. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suhair, and I would like to thank the speakers, each one of you for your insightful interventions and comments, and thank everybody in this room for taking the time to be part of this important discussion. We at JCP take this very seriously, and we see the opportunities in ICT for CleanTech. As promised, we will be circulating the main outputs of this meeting and asking you for feedback before convening another focus group that I hope that can be led by the relevant associations, and we'll be glad to help in facilitating and supporting. Thank you so much, Dr. Maher, or anybody else would like to conclude with any remarks? Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.